Hi, and welcome to the Living in a Prius YouTube channel. This week I wanted to do, I guess, what you'd call a mini series, just to give more background on me and my life because I chose to live in a car and start this Living in a Prius YouTube channel, not to try to get famous as a YouTuber, but as a lifestyle choice to simplify my life and to focus on some things that I really wanted to accomplish. And a big part of that is my career. And a lot of people find it fascinating that I've chosen to live in a car, given the fact that for the last 10 or 20 years, my career has been focused on housing development. So I wanted to give a little bit more background on my career and how I ended up as a housing developer living in a car. I touched on this a little bit about 7 months ago when I did a video back in, let's see, it was July, titled Homeless Apartment Developer and Tech Entrepreneur, because those are my two career paths that I'm focused on right now, is the housing development and the tech development focused on artificial intelligence, both of which go hand in hand. But in this and the next video or two, I really wanted to focus on the housing development aspect because that's something I've been working on for a long time. In fact, my entire career has been focused on housing. I'm an analyst, so my background, I've got a master's degree in social statistics. So I got into real estate as an analyst. In fact, my first job was for a commercial appraisal firm called Martin's Commercial in Wichita, Kansas, my hometown. And I was a real estate appraiser there for several years before I met a real estate developer by the name of Jack DeBoer, who was a client of ours at the appraisal firm. And Jack was not only locally famous, but nationally famous as a hotel developer because he had started Residence Inn, Candlewood Suites, a hotel chain called Summerfield Suites, which was rebranded as Hyatt House. And he also started a hotel chain called Woodspring Suites. And Woodspring Suites is where I worked. Like I said, I met Jack when I was an appraiser doing appraisals for his hotel company, and I got offered a job to be the first researcher for his hotel chain, Woodspring Suites. And I worked there for several years learning how to plan big projects like hotel projects. In fact, we built hundreds of hotels across the United States. So it was an incredible learning opportunity for me. And I took that experience and decided that I wanted to become a real estate developer myself, but I wanted to focus on housing. So the first thing that I did is I started small by flipping houses. In fact, I started a little business called Young and Van Sickle with a friend of mine, Charlie Young, that I'd known since high school. And we raised about $500,000 from investors and flipped houses. We bought houses in the old neighborhood of our town where there were big old 100-year-old houses that needed a lot of TLC, and we'd buy them and fix them up and resell them. And it was a great opportunity for me to learn how to work with different contractors like painters and carpenters and all different types of professionals that you work with when you're doing housing development. And so after doing that for several years, I took that experience and decided to launch my first apartment project. And that first project was actually taking the original Wichita High School and turning it into a 68-unit apartment complex. It's called Flats 324 Apartments, and here's actually a commercial that we did for the project.
Why you should be living at the Flats in 3, 2, 4. You're at the heartbeat of Old Town with the peace and quiet of a gated and secured community. You'll love the hangouts and the layouts and 2 options for living: old school or the brand new addition. Pets welcome, yeah, big dogs too, with fenced-in dog park, dog wash, and walking service. Airbnbs for your guests, a clubhouse cafe with free coffee and tea, cleaning carts, vacuums, even a housekeeping service, with washers and dryers in every flat. With all of these great amenities, maybe you should be living at the Flats. 3, 2, 4. 1 bedroom starting at just $750 a month. The Flats, 3, 2, 4. Check us out at flats324.com.
So that first apartment project, the Flats 324, was a really great learning opportunity for me to understand how to do housing on a larger scale. And it was also the first initiative that I had where I really tried to focus on doing high quality apartments that the average renter could afford. And after I finished that project, the next thing that I focused on was learning how to build apartments from the ground up. And so the Flats was the remodel of the original Wichita High School. And the next project that I did was a 216 unit apartment complex called Chisholm Lake Apartments in Wichita, Kansas. And again, my career has really been focused on finding ways to continually grow and evolve. And so this project allowed me to figure out how to do housing on a large scale, because with a 200 plus unit apartment complex, you really have to learn how to work with contractors and engineers, electrical engineers, plumbing engineers, all kinds of professionals to bring a project like this together. And so it was a really great opportunity. And here's a video that the local newspaper did about that project.
It really became the basis for our prototype, which is now going to be in cities all across Kansas. The key elements that we had in this type of a project that will go into future projects is the internet cafe, where we have free Wi-Fi, and a Starbucks style cafe but you can get free coffee, tea, and water. And then the exercise facility, where we have cardio equipment, weight equipment, and free weights. We also have a really nice pool that's heated to help extend the swimming season for the residents. A really unique pet washing facility, one of the first apartments in the nation to have a facility for pet washing, because we are 100% pet friendly. And then some really key elements in our units too, where you see the granite countertops in the kitchen, the 9-foot tall ceilings, the large and spacious bedrooms that can accommodate as large as a king-size bed. Those are really the key elements that we were most proud of at our Wichita project, and will go into our projects in rural communities all across Kansas.
And so in addition to doing the housing projects, the other thing that I focused on while in Wichita was really doing a lot of community leadership work. And so over the 10 to 20 years that I was building a career in housing development, I also took on a lot of local leadership roles. Here's my personal website at jasonvansickle.com, where I have a press archive where there's actually over 130 newspaper and radio and TV interviews that were done about me and the different projects that I was doing. So I was really working hard to be a contributing member, not only of my hometown, Wichita, but also in my home state of Kansas. In fact, I launched a nonprofit initiative called the Kansas Rural Housing Coalition, which back in 2013 started with a big conference with hundreds of community leaders, mayors, city council members that came together to talk about housing, because this was at the beginning of the nation's housing crisis, when communities were starting to realize they needed more options to create quality housing in their communities. And as part of the Kansas Rural Housing Coalition that I led, I actually did one of the largest housing studies ever completed. I did a free housing study for every city and county in the state of Kansas, which ended up being over 700 reports, and each of the reports is over 80 pages. So it's a total of over 60,000 pages of research and analysis. Again, because I'm an analyst, that's how I was academically trained. That's how I began my career. And that's, as a housing developer, my focus has always been on taking an analytical, data-driven approach. And so that was my life up to 2018. And in 2018, I realized my kids were grown, they'd moved out. I was an empty nester, and I decided it was time to open a new chapter in life. As you've seen in other videos, I sold my house and I moved to Denver, a larger city with the ability to focus on national instead of just local initiatives. The first thing that I did is I started the Civic Health Coalition, which is a nonprofit that focuses on how to make communities stronger and healthier. And obviously, one of the most important things about having a healthy community is making sure everyone has a good quality place to live. So one of the first things that the Civic Health Coalition did is we started a website called housingmodel.org, which is just all of the resources I've gained over the course of my career developing housing, everything from architectural plans to market research and project planning that I just decided to make available free to developers and communities on an open website where those resources can be downloaded. And then, in addition to the nonprofit work, I decided to continue with the for profit work by starting Amenity Suites because you can only do so much with nonprofit efforts in housing because a housing development project like apartments is hundreds of units that cost 10, 20, 30 million dollars to develop, and it's hard to raise that kind of money from the nonprofit world. So I started Amenity Suites so I could still tap into investors and that development momentum to build high quality apartments that the average renter could afford. So I'll talk more about amenity suites and more details in the next video, but I wanted to initially provide a background on how I became a housing developer who ultimately chose to give away everything and live homeless in a Prius. So in the next video, we'll talk more about the amenity suites model and what that is focused on doing for housing across the country. As always, feel free to leave any questions or comments in the comment section below. I work really hard to respond to those as quickly as possible. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and I will see you in the next video.